Hello, I'm James Izimoha and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. After 2 years of war, mediators reach a Gaza peace deal with a ceasefire expected to take effect within the next 24 hours. Ursula von der Leyen survives 2 votes of no confidence amid rising divisions in the European Parliament. And Putin says Russia is fully cooperating with Azerbaijan in the 2024 Azal plane crash probe as he meets Ilham Aliyev in Tajikistan. Thank you for joining us. Israel and Hamas have signed the first phase of a US-brokered deal aimed at ending the conflict in Gaza. The agreement includes the release of all Israeli hostages and the establishment of a framework for a ceasefire, with international partners playing a key role in the negotiations. Let's take a closer look at what this means.
US President Donald Trump was handed a note by Secretary of State Marco Rubio during a meeting at the White House on Wednesday, moments before the president announced that a deal to end the war in Gaza was close.
The Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly, so I will take a couple of more questions.
And that announcement was that Israel and Hamas have signed off on the first phase of the US 20-point proposed Gaza peace deal. Trump said, "I am very proud to announce that Israel and Hamas have both signed off on the first phase of our peace plan." He added at the end, "Blessed are the peacemakers." Israel, in turn, will withdraw its forces to a mutually agreed upon line, though this doesn't constitute a full troop withdrawal. The so-called yellow line from President Trump's plan has been adjusted. Under the terms of the agreement, Israel is expected to withdraw troops to a pre-agreed line within 24 hours of formal government approval. According to the IDF, that redeployment will leave Israeli forces in control of 53% of Gaza's territory. The agreement, brokered with the involvement of the United States, Egypt, Qatar and Turkey, marks a significant diplomatic breakthrough. It remains unclear whether Hamas has agreed to fully disarm, and questions persist regarding who will govern Gaza following the implementation of the agreement. Israel seeks a durable ceasefire, guarantees for hostage safety and assurances that Hamas will be disarmed, while Gaza's reconstruction is monitored by international partners. Hamas, on the other hand, demands permanent ceasefire terms, complete Israeli troop withdrawal to agreed lines, unrestricted humanitarian access, the return of displaced residents, and reconstruction under a Palestinian technocratic body. While the agreement marks an historic step toward peace, its long-term success will hinge on both sides upholding their commitments and on sustained international support to guide Gaza's recovery.
Over to Israel and Gaza, where there are rare scenes of joy on both sides. Israelis and Palestinians celebrating what they hope will be the long-awaited end to the war.
طبعا الحمد لله على وقف إطلاق النار ووقف شلال الدماء.
Both Israelis and Palestinians poured into the streets on Thursday, clapping and cheering after Israel and Hamas agreed to the first phase of US President Donald Trump's 20-point plan to end the Gaza war. Indirect talks in Egypt brought the breakthrough just a day after the second anniversary of Hamas's cross-border attack that set off the conflict. The deal, announced late Wednesday, includes a ceasefire and hostage exchange. In Khan Yunis, crowds gathered clapping and cheering after experiencing 2 years of heartache and war.
These are moments that are considered historic moments, long awaited by Palestinian citizens after 2 years of killing and genocide that was committed with arrogance against the Palestinian people.
Thank God for the ceasefire, the end of bloodshed and killing. I am not the only one happy. All of the Gaza Strip is happy. All the Arab people, all of the world is happy with the ceasefire.
This is something joyful for us, and we thank our brothers and anyone who contributed, even if verbally, to stop the war and to stop the bloodshed.
Families of hostages living in Washington, D.C. spoke by phone with Trump on Thursday, who told them their loved ones would return on Monday.
Mr. President, we believe in you. We know you've done so much for us over the past, since you became a president, and even before that. And we trust you fulfill the mission until every hostage, every 48 of the hostages are home. Thank you so much. Blessed be the peacemakers.
God bless you, Mr. President. God bless America.
Thank you very much. You just take care of yourselves. The hostages will come back. They're all coming back on Monday.
All
They're coming back. Thank you to the people of Israel, to the soldiers. Thank you to President Trump. Thank you to all who helped bring my son and the hostages back. We won't stop. We won't stop fighting till the last hostage. Matan is coming home.
Truly, the joy is deep, but we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic until they get into the Red Cross vehicle and truly meet the IDF soldiers. Until that moment, we must pray, cry out to the gates of heaven, truly do everything with God's help.
All over Gaza and Israel, there are sounds of celebration blended with quiet prayers, hopeful for a peace that would last beyond the night.
The Israeli government is set to convene today to formally ratify the peace agreement reached with Hamas. Israel says a ceasefire is expected to begin within 24 hours after its government approves the deal tonight. We'll bring you the latest lines as they come, but the deal brokered with Egyptian mediation includes provisions for prisoner and hostage exchange. Israeli media reported that the process will unfold in stages under international supervision. The Israeli president's office says that the U.S. president is expected to be in Jerusalem on Sunday. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi had also invited Trump to Egypt yesterday to celebrate the signing of a ceasefire deal. Donald Trump himself indicated that the trip would likely occur either prior to the release of the hostages or shortly afterwards.
I may go there sometime toward the end of the week, maybe on Sunday, actually. We'll let you know. If that's the case, we'll be leaving probably on Sunday, maybe Saturday, maybe a little later than Saturday evening, but that seems to be our schedule.
Now, the government shutdown has entered its 9th day, and President Donald Trump says most federal workers will eventually be compensated for missed wages. However, he also suggested that not everyone affected will be eligible, saying some people don't deserve support and will be, quote, taken care of differently. Trump once again blamed Democrats for the ongoing deadlock, while Congress remains at a standstill with no agreement in sight. Meanwhile, the Internal Revenue Service announced that more than 34,000 employees will be furloughed starting on the 8th of October, further impacting services across the country.
Well, we're going to see. Most of them are going to get back pay, and we're going to try and make sure of that. But some of them are being hurt very badly by the Democrats, and they therefore won't qualify. Democrats want to make it worse. The Democrats want to approve health care for illegals coming into our country, many of them coming in from prisons and mental institutions and drug dealers. They want to give them health care. We don't want that for our people because that's going to destroy the health care that we already have. We'd like to make Obamacare better for people, less expensive and better.
The ongoing shutdown continues to affect communities across the United States. Charity organizations and food banks say they are preparing to address a potential increase in demand for assistance among affected families.
An Arizona charity that helps feed families in need says it expects demand for its services to rise as the U.S. government shutdown continues. Thousands of federal workers were furloughed when the Republicans and Democrats weren't able to reach an agreement on its spending budget by the 1st of October. The Society of St. Vincent de Paul in Phoenix provides food, rental assistance and other support to the community.
Anytime someone suddenly doesn't receive a paycheck that they're expecting for their house and their livelihood, it can really cause a lot of stress on themselves and their families, and it can cause a need for them to seek support from places like St. Vincent de Paul to get the food that they need to feed their families, to get help with rent, to get help with utilities. And we expect that we could see some increases with people in our community needing that help.
This week, volunteers and staff were making meals and collecting food and water donations. St. Vincent de Paul says it serves £7 million of food to the community each year.
It's always hard to know how much people need our help, but at the end of the day, because there's so many people willing to give back, it also, I think, still remains hopeful that we can be here for each other and we can be here to lend a hand.
Furloughed federal workers and essential federal employees will not receive paychecks until the shutdown ends. However, they are expected to receive back pay once an agreement is reached.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer met with his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi in Mumbai on Thursday. The focus of his two-day visit was about doubling down on the potential of a trade deal expected to take effect within a year. The two leaders also discussed the war in Ukraine and stated that they wanted to see an end to the conflict. Starmer also announced more UK universities will be opening campuses in India, which the government said would bring a £50 million boost to the economy.
We're creating a new, modern partnership focused on the future and on winning the opportunities that it offers, and we're doing it together. And that's why we struck the UK-India Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement in July, a breakthrough moment, years in the making, slashing tariffs, increasing access to each other's markets to drive growth and create jobs for our people and making life better in both of our nations.
European Union Chief Ursula von der Leyen has comfortably survived 2 votes of no confidence. These latest motions of censure are the third attempt to unseat her within 3 months.
Vote is closed.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has survived 2 attempts to remove her from office after an overwhelming majority of EU lawmakers rejected no-confidence motions from hard-right and left-wing groups on Thursday. The far-right Patriots for Europe, led by Jordan Bardella, accused von der Leyen of surrendering to Washington on trade, pursuing senseless enlargements and failing on migration policy. That motion was rejected, with 378 EU lawmakers voting against it and 179 in favour. A second motion of censure, proposed by the Parliament's hard-left group, criticised von der Leyen's handling of Latin American trade, the Green Deal and migration. It was rejected, with 383 EU lawmakers voting against it and 133 in favour. These latest motions come just under 3 months after the previous no-confidence vote in July, highlighting a fragmented parliament and fragile trust between the Commission and centrist parties. Von der Leyen accused her opponents of fuelling divisions instead of strengthening the union. A no-confidence vote is one of Parliament's strongest accountability tools, requiring a 2/3 majority to dismiss the Commission, a threshold never reached. Although the motions of censure had little chance of meeting that threshold, some lawmakers said they could expose broader unease over her leadership and risk destabilising the EU Assembly, whose backing is needed to pass legislation.
Hungarian writer Laszlo Krasznahorkai has been awarded the 2025 Nobel Prize in Literature. The Nobel Committee praised his compelling and visionary collection of work that explores apocalyptic terror while reaffirming the power of art. Born in Eula, Hungary in 1954, Krasznahor is best known for his debut novel, Shot and Tango, later adapted into a 7-hour film. His long, intricate sentences and bleak portrayals of human struggle have drawn comparisons to Kafka and Melville. Welcome back to A News. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has survived twin no-confidence motions in the European Parliament, a rare show of unity between the far right and far left that highlights growing rifts in Brussels. To unpack this, we're joined by Klaus Jorgens, political analyst with Economy First Limited from London, UK. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Pleasure being on there. Thank you.
Now, Ursula von der Leyen has comfortably survived 2 no-confidence votes this week. What does this outcome reveal about her support within the European Parliament?
Well, I'm originally from Germany. Give me please time for 1 minute, a historical comment. In the past, in the European Parliament, there was an unwritten consensus that out of the mandate of the President and some of his team in the European Parliament, for half of the mandate, it would have been a socialist, social democrat, and for the other half, it would have been a conservative. Everything seemed to be very well organized. Many people outside the parliament said, oh, this is all a kind of pre-arranged agreement and no one else has a chance. But at that time, there was no other party with a significant number of members in the European Parliament. Then politics changed in Europe. We had more center-right parties coming up. The Liberals got stronger. The Greens in particular got stronger. And then more recently, unfortunately, the far left and the far right got stronger. So it is impossible to simply say that everything is decided between the socialists and the conservatives anymore. And even the conservatives, of course, split up between the European People's Party and the European Conservatives and Reformers quite some years ago. This is the first point I want to make. Now, we have a reality in Europe which is reflected in the European Parliament. Voters not necessarily only want to vote for the 2 big blocs, but they have discovered alternative pathways. Some are in the realm of democracy, some others are unfortunately not. Now, this is my first observation. Secondly, yes, she survived. Ursula von der Leyen survived her 3rd attempt. Now, of course, she will be happy, but her team and herself, if I would put her into my shoes, of course I can't as a commentator, but please see it figuratively speaking. After today's attempts, even I would say, am I the right person for the job? Because if I really now commit a big blunder, something goes wrong, and only one of the 2 groups now must say no. The socialists came to her rescue today. If they say, no, we don't do it anymore because you are conservative, then she has to go. A 2/3 majority is almost out of the question, but her reputation has been tarnished, I must say so. She will be happy that she has survived, but the position of the President of the European Commission, regardless of her being in power, that has been tarnished, and that is what greatly worries me.
Now, to touch upon what you just mentioned, what then do you think is the driving force behind her remaining on that seat?
Of course, that's a very good question. First of all, of course, personal ambition. She was already mentioned perhaps to replace the German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier as the next president of Germany. Nothing has been decided yet, but from a top position in the German government, all of a sudden the leading position in the European Commission, she might one day decide she wants to go back to Germany and actually be the president of the country. I would not be surprised, to be honest. I don't see her as a chancellor, to be honest. No, I never saw Mrs. von der Leyen as that an active politician touring the streets and shaking hands, with the people knocking at doors and distributing leaflets and then getting elected. No, she's a technocrat, she's a bureaucrat, and some say she's very good at it. And it's not my position to say she is not very good at it. But I have a few points as well, of course. Think about Pfizer. Think about the handling of the coronavirus. I never forget that the EU Commission financed a video out of our taxpayers' money where Mrs. von der Leyen taught us how to wash our hands. And then I said, oh my goodness, something is wrong in Brussels. And I was probably pretty much right. Clinging to power, yes. And trying to have a career after her term at the EU Commission. I think this is what she wants. And fair enough, that is a politician's life. So no criticism there.
Critics cited her alignment with Washington on trade and challenges on migration. How politically significant are these criticisms now that the motion have failed?
Yes, of course. We all remember the meeting when Mrs. von der Leyen and President Macron and others sat with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, and he was basically lecturing the assembled European elites what to do and what not to do. And then she went on about migration and that they do everything perfect. And then Donald Trump simply spoke about domestic issues. So not even acknowledging her comments. Now, if the EU really wants to be a serious player again, and I'm very outspoken here, but that's why we have a journalist freedom. I think the current spokesperson for foreign and international affairs, Mrs. Kaja Kallas, with all my modesty, and even the president of the EU Commission are not apt for the task to transform the European Union into a multicultural, successful on the economic front, the humanitarian front, the geopolitical front institution. I think nothing has to do with gender equality. People have to be the best. And me as a European and as a German, I'm really, really, really not happy how the EU is represented on the world stage for the time being. And now put this into context, the UN has to be reformed. We see hopefully a peace in Palestine one day, hopefully very soon with Ukraine. We have basically different worries instead of motions of no confidence. But it underlines, last point promised, very briefly, over time, the European Parliament became an actor from totally insignificance via the co-decision making procedure to a half sovereign actor. And now all of a sudden they could even literally say, no, EU Commission, bye-bye, we don't want you anymore. A two-thirds majority is needed. For the time being, no one is going that step, but I think Mrs. von der Leyen will cling to power, but she might consider perhaps changing politics and her approach to how to represent Europe abroad.
Now, finally and briefly, sir, what does this episode suggest about stability within the European Commission and Europe's broader political landscape?
Okay, I'm very brief now. You know how the commissioners are basically proposed. It is by national governments. People say it's a transnational, international organization, and it's the will of the people who decides. No, the people vote for national governments, and the national governments eventually propose members of the EU Commission. It's not the other way around. And eventually, there will be quite a few people in a number of EU capitals who literally, as we speak, might say, perhaps it could be my turn to replace Mrs. von der Leyen. It might trigger in a period of instability exactly at a time when it is not needed at all.
Thank you very much, sir, for your time and insight.
Thank you very much indeed.
After the break, we'll take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay tuned. Welcome back to A News. Presidents of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev and Russian leader Vladimir Putin have met in Dushanbe. The talks, held ahead of the CIS summit in the Tajik capital, focused on the December Azal plane crash that strained bilateral ties between the two countries. Our Andy Miach has more.
Hi from Dushanbe. Now, before we get to the summit of the Commonwealth of Independent States happening here in the Tajik capital on Friday, we've got some news for you from Azerbaijani-Russian relations that were strained ever since last December and the Azal plane crash near Aktau in Kazakhstan. Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev met with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin here in Dushanbe today for one-on-one talks, and the two spoke on the incident. Now, let's just remind you that Baku claims that the crash that killed 38 people was caused by Russian air defense missiles. Now, after we just cleared that up, here's what Putin said today. He again offered his condolences and said the plane was not targeted directly by the Russian Air Force, who had opened fire due to Ukrainian drones in Russian airspace. He went on to say the plane was likely hit by the shrapnel of missiles exploding near it. He underlined that he had earlier apologized to Ilham Aliyev when they held a phone conversation just after the crash. Putin said the investigation is still ongoing and will be finished soon. He added that the compensation will be paid and that, quote, a legal assessment will be given to the actions of all the officials involved. Now, this meeting came ahead of the CIS summit that's going to see Azerbaijan's Ilham Aliyev, Armenia's Nikol Pashinyan, Russia's Vladimir Putin, as well as presidents of Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan hold talks here at a gathering hosted by the Tajik president at the Palace of the Nation on Friday. From Dushanbe for A News, Elbrus Musaev and Andy Miach.
Now let's take a listen at what the two leaders had to say regarding the reasons leading to the tragic incident.
Dear Ilham Aliyev, not long ago, briefly, admittedly, but still, we met in Beijing. Before that, we had spoken several times over the phone. I would like to begin our meeting with the most sensitive topic, the aviation tragedy that occurred in our skies. Even back then, during our first phone conversation, I not only expressed my apologies for the fact that the tragedy took place over Russian territory, but also conveyed my deepest condolences to the families of those who perished. I would like to repeat and reaffirm that, as agreed, we are providing every possible assistance to the investigation. The investigation is nearing completion, and now, generally speaking, we can address the causes of this tragedy, this catastrophe. It was linked to several factors. The first is that a Ukrainian drone was present in the airspace. We were tracking 3 such drones that had crossed the border of the Russian Federation on the night of the tragedy. The second cause lies in technical malfunctions within Russia's air defense system itself. 2 missiles that were launched did not hit the aircraft directly. Had that happened, it would have crashed immediately, but instead exploded, perhaps through self-destruction, a few meters away, roughly 10 meters. Therefore, the damage occurred not primarily from combat fragments, but most likely from debris from the missiles themselves. This is why the pilot perceived it as a collision with a flock of birds, which he reported to Russian air traffic controllers, all of which is recorded in the so-called black boxes. He was also advised, and this too is clearly audible in the recordings, to land in Makhachkala, but he decided to return to his base airport and then to Kazakhstan. Nevertheless, the fact remains. I have now set out for you the reasons for the tragedy. All this is documented following a thorough analysis of the technical data and a second-by-second verification of the black box recordings. We have discussed this issue with you before. Of course, everything required in such tragic circumstances will be done by the Russian side in terms of compensation, and a legal assessment will be given regarding the actions of all responsible officials. Naturally, words of sympathy and moral support cannot resolve the main problem. They cannot bring back those who lost their lives in this tragedy. But our duty, as we agreed from the very beginning, is to provide an objective assessment of everything that happened and to identify the true causes. This, of course, takes some time. To put a final full stop, we will still need a little more time. But overall, I have conveyed to you what I was informed of literally on the eve of our meeting, yesterday or the day before. In fact, even late last night I called Moscow to ask if there were any further details. Everything I know, I have now told you. That is the first part. The second part, I would like to note that despite this, our interests, our mutual interests in many areas coincide and are very close. Above all, this concerns our trade and economic relations. Despite all the nuances associated with this tragedy and other issues arising from it, our trade and economic ties have developed and continue to develop successfully. Last year we grew by around 6%, and this year trade turnover has already increased by more than 16%. That is an excellent result. Thanks to your constant attention to this area, our humanitarian ties have also always remained at a high level. We will talk about this too. We are, A, grateful to you for that, and B, certainly determined to do everything on our side to maintain this positive dynamic. And of course, as for the regional situation and the situation on international platforms, our foreign ministries have always worked very closely together. I hope this cooperation will not only be restored, but will continue in the spirit of our relations and our alliance. We never forget this. We remember the treaty that was signed not so long ago, and we will do everything on our part to implement all its main provisions. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, Владимир Владимирович. В первую очередь, хотел бы выразить благодарность за встречу.
Thank you very much, Vladimir Putin. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude for this meeting. As you mentioned, we had a brief exchange in Beijing, and just 2 days ago, I also called you on the occasion of your birthday. I would like to take this opportunity once again to congratulate you and wish all the very best to you, your loved ones, and the friendly people of Russia. Of course, I would like to express special thanks for the detailed information you have provided regarding the tragedy of last December, when the Azerbaijan Airlines aircraft crashed. We were in contact with each other immediately. As you may recall, on that tragic day I was flying to a meeting in St. Petersburg, and as soon as I was informed of the incident, I called you directly from the plane. We expressed our condolences to one another. I also asked you to convey to our colleagues who took part in that informal CIS summit that, for obvious reasons, I would not be able to attend. I would also like to thank you for personally keeping this situation under control. As we have repeatedly exchanged views, and as members of our respective teams remain in constant contact, you have been personally overseeing the progress of the investigation. We have never had any doubt that it would be conducted objectively and thoroughly. Therefore, I would once again like to express my gratitude that you considered it appropriate to address this matter at our meeting today. As you noted, not only our trade and economic relations, but cooperation in all other areas has been developing successfully this year. As you mentioned, the trade turnover has shown good momentum. Likewise, in all other directions, there has been no slowdown or regression. On the contrary, the roadmaps we approved together are being implemented successfully. The Russian-Azerbaijani Intergovernmental Commission also met relatively recently, where the co-chairs held detailed discussions on a wide range of issues, not only in trade and economic matters. And of course, today's meeting is another good opportunity to review our agenda once again. It is quite extensive and positive. So once again, thank you for this information, and I am confident that the messages we are sending to our societies today will also be received positively.
Now, to bring you some context, the Azerbaijan Airlines Flight 8243 aircraft faced a tragic ordeal during its flight from Baku to Grozny in December last year. What began as a routine journey ended in disaster near Aktau, Kazakhstan, after the plane encountered suspected missile damage and electronic interference. Here's a closer look at the events of that day.
The Embraer 190 aircraft, operated by Azerbaijan Airlines, was on a routine flight from Baku to Grozny, Russia's North Caucasus region, on 25th December. The journey, however, turned into a dramatic and tragic ordeal when the plane likely sustained damage from a Russian Pantsir S-1 air defense system. Denied permission to land at Grozny Airport and nearby airports in Makhachkala and Mineralny Vody, the Azerbaijani passenger jet found itself in an increasingly dire situation. Adding to that, electronic warfare systems deployed by the Russian side reportedly paralyzed the aircraft's communication systems, leaving the crew with minimal support. The flight was redirected to Aktau Airport, 450 kilometers, 280 miles, east of its intended destination, what seemed almost an impossible task. Piloting a damaged aircraft, navigating hostile skies, and battling the elements, Captain Igor Kshniakin and First Officer Alexander Kalyaninov displayed extraordinary professionalism and composure. Flight Radar 24 data revealed erratic vertical speed fluctuations in the final 74 minutes of the flight, underscoring the crew's struggle to maintain control. Aviation expert and former pilot Dan Bubb, in his interview to Newsweek, praised the pilot's ability to transform a compromised aircraft into a heavy glider, steering it along the best possible glide path under immense pressure. Canadian aviation specialist Brian Murray echoed these sentiments, highlighting their quick thinking and adaptability, which turned what could have been a complete disaster into a moment of heroism. Despite their valiant efforts, the long and arduous journey ended in tragedy as the plane crashed near Aktau, Kazakhstan, following a desperate attempt to execute an emergency landing. The heroic actions of the crew, however, saved 29 passengers from certain death. A day of mourning was declared in Azerbaijan on the 26th of December to honor the victims of this catastrophe. Across the country, a minute of silence was observed and motorists honked their horns in a collective tribute. Kazakhstan's Deputy Prime Minister Kanat Bozumbayev confirmed 38 fatalities and ongoing rescue efforts at the crash site. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev deployed a medical evacuation aircraft and assigned a government commission led by the Deputy Prime Minister to investigate the incident. emerging details paint a harrowing picture. The aircraft reportedly experienced GPS jamming near Grozny, its radar signals vanishing shortly thereafter. Russian officials cited bad weather as the cause of the diversion, but experts suspect military activity and missile damage. Mark Z of OPS Group, an organization monitoring global airspace risks, analyzed images of the aircraft's wreckage and identified fragments consistent with a surface-to-air missile strike. At a high level, we put the probability of it being a SAM attack well into the 90 to 99% bracket, Z stated. Azerbaijan's Digital Development and Transport Minister Rashad Nabiev revealed that survivors heard an explosion near Grozny, and physical evidence, such as small holes in the plane's tail, strongly supports the missile strike theory. On 28 December, Russian President Vladimir Putin apologized to Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev, offering deep condolences to the victims' families and expressing hope for the swift recovery of the injured. Both leaders agreed on the necessity of a thorough investigation, accountability for those responsible, and compensation for the victims' families. While the tragedy claimed many lives, the courage and professionalism of Captain Kshniakin and First Officer Kalyaninov will be remembered as a beacon of hope amidst the sorrow, a testament to human resilience in the face of unimaginable adversity.
Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan attended the Global Gateway Forum in Brussels and shared his country's vision for cooperation. He touched on issues including regional connectivity, peace, and new cooperation initiatives with the European Union.
The forum, which is underway in Brussels, focuses discussions on advancing regional and global connectivity and spotlighting new avenues for cooperation. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan was part of the speakers at the event, where some aspects of his speech touched on elements involving Azerbaijan and Europe. Pashinyan highlighted the recent peace deal with Baku and ongoing normalization process with Turkey, linking it to the broader peace efforts in the region.
I'm happy to report that today, with peace established between Armenia and Azerbaijan and positive dynamics in Armenia-Turkey normalization, our very idea of crossroads of peace is being realized, having full potential to change the whole dynamics not only in the South Caucasus, but also far beyond.
Logistics and communications issues were also among the key topics discussed at the Brussels Forum. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan drew attention to the TRIP initiative, describing it as a potential driver for transport and energy cooperation across the wider region.
The Trump route for international peace and prosperity, also known as TRIP route, is a promising investment project that entails a plethora of opportunities for the cooperation from railroads to energy.
He also underlined that Armenia's ties with the European Union have reached an unprecedented level, paving the way for deeper cooperation under Europe's new connectivity agenda.
The relations between Armenia and the European Union have never been closer. This growing partnership creates unique opportunities for anchoring Armenia more deeply and strategically into Europe's evolving connectivity vision, such as the Global Gateway, the Black Sea Strategy, the Middle Corridor, Trans-European Transport Network, and more.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen also addressed the forum, highlighting Europe's approach to partnerships based on common interests.
Partnerships based on common interests and respect for sovereignty. And that is what unites us here today. That is Europe's approach. Like you, we recognize that our strength relies on diversifying our relationships. And that's why we are expanding our network of free trade agreements. Thank you very much.
The Global Gateway Forum focuses also on other advancing global connectivity in the face of geopolitical and geo-economic challenges.
Georgia's Defense Minister Irakli Chokovini is in Ankara, Turkey for a key trilateral defense ministerial alongside his Turkish and Azerbaijani counterparts. The meeting comes amid growing regional security challenges, from the shifting dynamics in the South Caucasus to Georgia's evolving foreign policy. A correspondent has more on the visit and its wider significance.
The Azerbaijan-Turkey-Georgia trilateral defense meeting in Ankara brings together the three nations' defense chiefs, Zakir Hasanov, Yasar Guler, and Irakli Chokovini, to discuss strategic partnerships, regional defense planning, and joint security initiatives. According to Georgia's Ministry of Defense, the ministers will also hold bilateral talks and sign a joint declaration aimed at strengthening cooperation and regional stability. This defense format, launched in 2012, has become one of the most important regional security mechanisms in the South Caucasus. Last year's meeting in Baku emphasized military training and intelligence sharing, while earlier sessions in Batumi and Kars focused on border defense and counter-terrorism coordination. But this year's summit carries particular diplomatic weight for Georgia. The implications are twofold. On one hand, closer defense coordination with Turkey and Azerbaijan strengthens its security resilience at a time of growing uncertainty in relations with some Western partners. On the other hand, it positions Tbilisi as a bridge in an evolving regional security order where pragmatic cooperation may carry as much weight as formal alliances. Diplomats note that these meetings also send a quiet message to larger powers that regional actors can manage their own security architecture without external mediation. In this sense, today's trilateral is less about symbolic unity and more about strategic continuity, keeping regional dialogue alive as the South Caucasus adjusts to new diplomatic realities. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Welcome back to A News. As discussions on global connectivity take center stage at the Global Gateway Forum in Brussels, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan outlined his vision for regional integration through the newly announced TRIP initiative. To discuss the wider implications for the South Caucasus and beyond, we're joined by Ambassador Matthew Brazer, former U.S. diplomat from Istanbul, Turkey. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador.
Very happy to be with you.
Now, Prime Minister Pashinyan spoke about the TRIP project as a new route for regional peace and prosperity. How significant is this initiative in reshaping connectivity across the South Caucasus?
It could be hugely significant if it happens. There are a lot of details we don't know. It's not clear who will conduct the customs checks, who will provide security, who will be the investors, what U.S. companies might operate it, and will there be a peace treaty to form kind of the diplomatic foundation. But if it happens, of course, it will help increase the transit through the South Caucasus, so expand the middle corridor, and will also connect Azerbaijan main part to Nakhchivan via Armenia, and then forge, I think, a new interconnectivity of Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkey, and then the other side of the Caspian Sea as well.
Ambassador, from a U.S. and European perspective, how does the Global Gateway framework complement or compete with China's Belt and Road Initiative in the region?
Oh, I think the Global Gateway is designed by the European Union to compete with the Belt and Road Initiative. I think our European allies understand the Belt and Road Initiative is a reality. China is using its money as a way to buy influence, but also providing communications and connectivity projects that are useful. So I think what Europe is saying is, okay, that's a reality. We have to have our alternative systems out there as well that are built more on cooperation with other countries than on control, which is what China seeks.
Now, the Prime Minister mentioned peace agreements opening regional infrastructure. How realistic is this optimism given the complex regional dynamics?
He actually said there's peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Now, there's a peace treaty. The text was agreed last March. It was initialed in the White House by the foreign ministers of Azerbaijan and Armenia, but it hasn't been signed by the national leaders, and so it hasn't been ratified. So it doesn't exist yet. And I think it's Yeah, Pashinyan is being optimistic. He needs to be because he faces a very difficult task ahead. He needs a supermajority to get the peace treaty approved by Armenia's parliament, and then needs a national referendum with many Armenians still not ready for peace.
Now, do you think the trip route could become a viable alternative to existing corridors like the Middle Corridor or North-South Transport Corridor?
I don't think it's designed to be an alternative. I think it's designed to complement and be part of the Middle Corridor. So complement the route now running from Azerbaijan through Georgia to Turkey. And the more traffic that can come through both parts of the Middle Corridor, the better for everybody. As far as the north-south routes go, those don't compete with the Zangezur corridor or the Trip because those are different directions entirely. And there do need to be more north-south transit routes as well. I think ones that need to be looked at is from Central Asia through Afghanistan and Pakistan to the Indian Ocean.
Now, what could Armenia's closer cooperation with the EU mean for broader connectivity between Europe, Central Asia, and the South Caucasus?
I think it means that we are likely to see these transportation interconnection projects moving forward as Armenia is more and more confident that peace will reign with Azerbaijan and that therefore investors will come and will want to invest in factories and other production in Armenia and in the entire South Caucasus region, which then will bolster the economic connectivity between the South Caucasus and Europe.
Now, looking ahead, what will determine whether projects like TRIP and the Global Gateway can deliver lasting stability alongside economic growth?
Well, as we saw with the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline and the South Caucasus natural gas pipeline back in the late 1990s, those projects succeeded because governments and investors worked together. The governments, and I would play a part in this, had to help make sure that the projects that the governments wanted made commercial sense for the investors, and we succeeded. The same thing needs to happen with these big transport projects, unless governments are going to finance them themselves. It's much better if they're commercially viable, so that means the governments and the companies, the investors, need to work together to put in place the right legal and commercial frameworks. And of course, peace is needed. We need to see that peace treaty between Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Ambassador, in the recent meeting between Presidents Putin and Aliyev, Putin cited multiple factors in the Azov plane crash, including anti-missile operations, but did not explicitly admit full responsibility. How significant is this partial acknowledgement for Azerbaijan-Russia relations, and what impact could it have on trust and future cooperation in aviation safety investigations?
I think his statements today, President Putin's statements today, mark an attempt by him to try to get relations with Azerbaijan back on track and to de-escalate the tensions. He knows that President Aliyev was rightfully furious when President Putin apologized merely that the aircraft accident happened in Russian airspace. But he did not say he's going to make sure there's accountability, that those that committed this act are punished, and that there's compensation paid to the Azerbaijani victims. Today, he suggested he is going to do that. He said the investigation continues, it's reaching its conclusion soon, and suggested those who are responsible for this heinous act will be held responsible and accountable, and that there will be proper compensation paid. So I think Azerbaijan and Russian relations are much closer to being back on track after this, which sounds like a very productive discussion between the two presidents.
Ambassador, thank you very much for sharing your time and insight with us.
Thank you. Honored to be with you.
But that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.